So I said last time that I was going to teach you how to work a little more efficiently. And this is mostly if you're unfamiliar with keyboard shortcuts. But I also want to talk about a couple of features in the Rich Content Editor that are for power users or people who are a little more comfortable with working with the code that goes into generating the content here. Additionally, if you're not familiar with shortcuts and you still want some additional features that maybe will make your workflow enhanced, I'm going to talk about those here as well. So the first thing I want to discuss is this little icon here, right next to where it says HTML Editor. We're going to click on this in a second, but I want to click here first. This is going to bring up a list of what are called keyboard shortcuts. Now, it's worth mentioning that these keyboard shortcuts here are initially listed for people using a Windows PC. If you're using a Macintosh of any kind where you don't have dedicated F9 and 10 buttons, in addition to Alt, you're going to have to press Function. So it's going to be Function, Alt, F9. So what do these shortcuts do for us? Well, the main thing that these shortcuts are going to do is they're going to bring up an additional menu bar at the top here if you're uncomfortable with using keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so I know that's kind of ironic, but here's what's going to happen. So let me go ahead. First and foremost, we want to make sure our cursor is inside the text area. And when it's inside the text area, we're going to press Function, Alt, and F9 if we're on a Mac, or Alt F9 if we're on a Windows PC. And you'll notice that brought in this menu bar. Now, everything I'm going to show you in this menu bar is already either handled here, or it can be handled in this window using keyboard shortcuts. So let's say I type, again, hello world, but then I type something that was a mistake, and I want to undo that. And let's say I've done an extensive amount of typing, and I make a mistake, or what's worse, let's say that I actually have typed a long and lengthy paragraph, which of course here is going to be just garbledy-gook, and then for whatever reason I'm working and I accidentally highlight and delete that. And let's say that instead of that being just made up and not actual words, let's say that that was something really important. Well, I've had some people point out to me there's no undo button. Well, with this menu, which again we got to using Alt F9 or Function Alt F9 if we're on a Mac, I do have an undo button. So I can click Edit and then I can click Undo, and that removes or brings back whatever the last thing I did was. So here I had deleted that, it now brings it back. If I do Undo again, it's now going to delete the second piece of text I typed. If I undo again, it's going to go all the way back to the H. And here's the cool thing. In addition to undo, I can also redo. So I can redo up to a certain point. I also have copy, cut, and paste available here. Okay, and I also have select all. But you'll notice every single one of these has an icon or a list of commands that I can press together that will elicit the exact same kind of effect. So for example, let's say that again I typed a bunch of stuff and I accidentally then deleted that stuff. And I wanted to undo that. Well, instead of having to remember how to get to here, to then press this, to then give me this menu, I can actually just use a keyboard shortcut to undo that. Now, if you're on a Windows PC, this is going to be Control-Z. If you are on a Mac, this is going to be the Command key and Z. So Command-Z is undo. If I want to redo, it's Command-Y on a Mac or Control-Y on a Windows PC. And then the same is going to be true for your shortcuts for copy, cut, and paste. So to copy something, you simply highlight it, and if you're on a Windows PC, you press Control-C. If you're on a Mac, you press Command-C. And then if you want to paste that something, you press Control-V if you're on a Windows PC, or Command-V if you're on a Mac. And if you want to cut something, then you highlight it, and you press Control-X if you're on a PC, or Command-X if you're on a Mac, and that cuts the something. And then if you want to paste it again, it's Control-V if you're on a Windows PC, or Command-V if you're on a Mac. So again, those shortcuts are shown here. Okay, in this drop-down window. I can also insert or edit hyperlinks, insert or edit videos, which you'll notice are also options here. I can use visual aids. I can format. Again, a lot of these options are going to be listed here as well. I can insert a table, again, offered here. And then for file, I can create a new document, which is a new page if I want to. So this menu, the reason it's hidden, in case you're wondering why it's hidden, is because for the most part, every aspect of it is represented somewhere here in the Rich Content Editor. And the aspects that aren't represented in the Rich Content Editor are shortcuts that you can perform using the keyboard if you're comfortable with it. Now, for those of you who want to modify the content of your Rich Content Editor further, let's say for whatever reason you're just not liking the way something looks, you can move into the HTML version. Now, I only recommend doing this if you're comfortable with working with HTML. So if you're comfortable with working with HTML, you can actually hop over here into the HTML editor, and you can then start adding in some of your additional styles if that's what you want to do. So if I want to change the font family here, then I can. Let's say that I want to do, one of the ones I like to do is text align justify. Okay, so just to show you what effect this is going to have, I'm going to switch back over to my Rich Content Editor. Now you're not going to see anything there, but let me go ahead and just type real quick. Just going to, essentially do nonsense. But what you'll notice is that with my text align justify, my text actually all lines up. So it does this really cool thing where instead of it being these breaks at the end of each of the lines, it does this nice uniform end to the line. And that's because, again, I'm comfortable with working with the HTML content editor. But if you're not comfortable with that, then you should be able to do most of what you'd like to do right here in the Rich Content Editor. So those are shortcuts. That is the way in which you can actually enable this additional editing bar, and that's also how you can jump into the HTML editor. So again, these are additional options that you have available to you when you're working in the Rich Content Editor.